That's the only camera.
Yeah, you can't see everybody in the room because it's just this way. It's okay.
Yeah, but I can feel them.
That's right. There you go.
Oh, that's so nice. Hi.
Okay, let's drop in. What are we dropping into? What are we dropping out of? Being hooked into all the busyness out there. It's so frog in the boiling water-ish. You just don't pay attention, you get sucked out more and more and more. So we let it go. And what happens? Where do we end up when we let go? Right here, right now. So in a sense, when we're getting hooked into the outer world, the flow of the outer senses, the demands out there, it actually takes effort, because when we let go, which is effortless, here we are. So it takes effort to keep us away from ourselves. Isn't that interesting? Is it possible to be in this still point here and still interact with the world? Is it possible to stay here, still, inner stillness, and be active out there in the world? It's a good question to ask oneself. Just breathe together on your own. And we're in this common field that we step into together. Whenever two or more come together in my name, the resonance goes way up, the amplification of the center of what we are, which is right here, right now, in this presence. So into this, we can step gratitude for being able to be in this right now. That we've moved through our own processes in such a way that we come here intentionally to be like this together. Yay for us. So we invite the flow, the collective wisdom comes through all of us. It shows up in the field, comes out of our mouths. We're sharing this, but not at the verbal level. We're sharing this at an energetic level. It doesn't matter if we're in the room together or if we're on Zoom and in the room together. That distance business is a complete illusion at the energy level. So we invite this in to come into our consciousness, to adjust our consciousness. We invite this wisdom in. We invite the vibration of this into our own localized field so that we can hear, so that we can remember. Remember. And just imagine it flowing through you. Whatever that looks like or feels like. That this truth is not a set of facts. It's a vibration. It's a structure. It's the most stable structure there is in existence. So as we align with this, because it is what we are, our own local experience of all of this becomes more and more stable. And yet infinitely alive. So we just stay open and we let it do its job here with us tonight. Sitting in an amplified field like this is why we come together. Accelerating our awakening, the unfoldment of all of this. But this is also a way we accelerate our alignment with this. And then when we leave here to go out into our daily lives, this connection is still here. Once established, it never breaks. Not possible. Temporarily forgotten, perhaps, if we get too caught up in the mind and too caught up in the senses and too caught up in the drama. That's always temporary. But now we could just notice when we're caught in that and just let go and back here. Back to presence. Back to self. Capital S. Ramana Maharshi says, God, Guru, and self are one and the same. Let's just take a moment and feel that. Yeah. Resistance. Resistance is futile. I think that line originally came out of Star Trek, the Borg, right? The thing is eating up, consuming everything, and it's just resistance is futile. A week or two ago, some of us were sitting in Kumbwa listening to some really good blues, and I'm sitting next to Kim, and we're having this conversation, and it comes out of my mouth, but along with the charge, it goes, there it is. That's the topic for the next satsang. Fighting with reality causes suffering. Let me say that again. Fighting with reality causes suffering. What is reality in this case? Reality is what this is this is what it is. That's undeniable, right? Because it's here. You can make up all the excuses, all the stories, all the deflections, but the fact is what this is this is what it is. Okay, there's reality. What's the ego now with the reality? It's the voice that says this should be different than it is. Whatever's going on right now is not okay. This should be different. Now, there's some insanity built into that thought system. The first one being it somehow thinks it knows the way reality should be, and this ain't it. the difference between what is and what should be is called suffering. We could end it right there. Shoulds. The should is the source of suffering. This should be different. And it doesn't matter what this is. So how does that square with something like what's going on in the world, and we need to protest and we need to fight and we need to do all this kind of stuff. We need to resist. You see signs like that all over the place, right? What was the underground called in World War II? The resistance. So there's a functional use of resistance, but then there's places where it doesn't belong, and this is what we're going to explore tonight. Another use of the word resistance is talking about immune systems. There's a certain resistance to pathogens, a certain resistance to external threats. And that's good. You don't want to not have that. But, and you could also say that in some way, like, so what is the immune system in the body? Well, it's that level of defense designed to help keep the body vehicle safe and active within this environment. So having no resistance at that level, not a good idea. But there's also having too much resistance in the immune system. That shows up as allergies, autoimmune diseases of all sorts. And so in this kind of thing, what we're talking about is there's a balance point for that level of resistance. Now, it turns out in an electronic circuit, one of the components that when you design an electronic circuit, the purpose of an electronic circuit is to manipulate electrons, to get it to do useful work. That's the whole electronics game, speaking as one who used to be in it. And one of the components in an electronic circuit is called a resistor. And it plays a useful role because you're designing the flow and you want the flow, some of it to go this way and some of it to go that way. It's like designing, it's like manipulating water in some sense. And as the water moves through a channel, it does things. So you have to have the right amount. No resistance, not okay. Too much resistance, not okay. Okay. Now let's come to emotional, spiritual resistance. This is the crux of where we're going here tonight. Think about it for yourself. How does resistance show up in your experience? What do you notice? Anybody? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What's your experience with when you know something? I'm in resistance. What is it? Pain. It feels like pain. Resistance feels like pain, you're saying.
Nausea.
Nausea.
Feeling
Anxiety.
blocked.
Feeling what?
Blocked.
Blocked. Blocked. Let me turn up the volume on that. Yeah, feeling blocked. Yeah, that's a good one. Anyone else?
Avoidance.
Avoidance. Yeah. So in that moment, what is it that that part of you is looking to avoid? It has different disguises, but it comes down to that one thing. What is it?
Pain.
Pain. Some kind of discomfort. Yeah.
That something might not be the way I want it or think it ought to be.
It should be different. There it is again. Fear shows up, the emotional fear, the emotional resistance shows up as fear, and it shows up in the body as a contraction. That's how you know when it's there. An unease. which is another way of saying dis-ease, which shows that it starts up in the mind, the emotional body. That's where it is.
But you may notice it first in the clenching of your teeth,
Yes.
the tightening of your chest,
Yes.
and the discomfort in your belly.
Yeah, exactly.
Gut reaction.
Right. And so the body is an important vehicle for tracing through to that. But notice that it's never limited to simply the body. This is an interesting thing. Course in Miracles says, and I've heard it in other places as well, Gabor Mate backs this up, the body, the physical body, is incapable of creating anything. That's very interesting. So it can't create the tightness on its own.
It's a reaction.
It comes from the emotional body expressing through the physical body. And the reason why we're in our circles, we talk about get back into the body is we all try to leave. Wendy and I were at a Stephen Levine weekend years or decades ago, and you do meditations, and then people come up to the microphone and just share, because this stuff brings up a lot of stuff. And this woman came up to the mic and said, people are always talking about wanting to leave their body, go travel here. I'd like to have an in-body experience for a change. Because we dissociate. Dissociation is a defense. Dissociation and defense is resistance to what is. In that case, the what is are any feelings that want to arise. That's what it is. So ultimately, in this level of resistance we're talking about resisting the flow of life, which is simply wanting to bring something into your experience. And we create a defense against that. That defense is what we'll call resistance. It takes many forms. It's from dissociation is a form, depression is a form, anxiety is a form, distraction in its myriad ways, which every human being is exceedingly good at. Work, shopping, sex, drugs, rock and roll. Rock and roll's not necessarily a distraction. Jazz, definitely not a distraction. But you know what I mean. We look for all the ways to dull the experience of life, because we were taught at a very early age that it's not safe to feel. That belief system is a big component of resistance. And so then it sets off a cascade of mechanisms and structures in the mind. The ego is extreme. It's not an enemy. It's not an enemy. We, especially in our, new agey and the spiritual, is like the ego is this thing you got to overcome, this thing. And it's just what Gabor Mate calls it, a stupid friend. It's a stupid friend, where it's trying to help you, but it's just really stupid at it. And there's a pretty good reason why. When do we form these ideas? A, that we have to defend ourselves from feelings, and B, how to go about doing it. When do we develop that? Or when does the ego develop that? I like talking about it as third person because we're not at an identity level. That's not what we are. When does it develop this stuff? Early. In fact, if you look at the book, It Didn't Begin With You, it started developing it a few generations ago. And then that emotional matrix that we're born into goes into the formation of our nervous system as we're in gestation. So by the time we come out, we're already got these structures already work. And then what are we born into? The emotional matrix of the family. But whatever it is that's in us, did it start with us? Well, no. Well, did it start with our parents? And you start to really look at this. No. Did it start with their parents? No. Keep going. When did it start?
The Big Bang.
Adam, you know, the apple. I mean, when did it start? So there's some things about this. Okay, so back to the main thread here is, so the ego structure develops as it's told what it is. And it's then also sitting in these currents of different experiences and feelings, many of which have a lot of pain in them. Okay, because that's not okay. In fact, when it's very strong, the fear is, this is going to kill me. Because when you're an infant, you don't have any other circuitry running other than that. You're completely merged into this emotional matrix. The whole purpose of the evolutionary purpose and the healthy purpose of an ego is to get you to start to differentiate from all of that. But by the time it's doing that, it's saying all these experiences are not safe to have. And so it builds a defense to that. And they're still running inside of all of us. Why do we do this work that we do? It's basically to dismantle that which we've been taught down to a neurological level. So resistance pretty much is a form of fear in whatever disguise it takes on. At the mind emotional level, because it also informs the neurology, it informs the cellular structures, there's a tightly coupled relationship there. So first, the dis-ease shows up in the mind and it flows into the body. If it's allowed to be worked through, if it can come up into consciousness, because awareness is corrective, right? Quoting the Buddhists, allowing feelings to come into conscious awareness allows the healing process to come. But the defense mechanism, the resistance to this, does everything it can to prevent it. So that energy is blocked up. Kim said block. Kimberly said block. The energy gets blocked up at the emotional, it's all energy. It's all energy. So it's designed to flow. Our natural state is this. It's just constantly dancing. When there's no blocks in the energy field, there's no blocks in the body, it's just this flow, and you could feel it, and it regenerates the cells, and everything flows nicely, and it gets healthy because the energy coming down the stream is healthy and it's unblocked. But when there are blocks in place, those blocks, if it's not worked out at these levels, show up in the body. We call it disease. And then we're in a culture that says, without saying it, it's not okay to feel, take this Band-Aid instead, which is called medicine, a drug. I think Rick Doblin said, isn't it interesting that we call drugs medicine and medicine drugs? Those who've done psychedelics know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But that's it. So we're in a culture that's in denial of all of this. There's a cultural resistance to what is. Resistance shows up as fear. Fear shows up as blocks. That blocks the flow of life. That's why the disease shows up. It's a block to the flow of the life force. You see, I mean, it's all connected. In the spiritual circles, they talk about light as being the expression of truth. So we have light moving through a system. When light is moving, or energy is moving through wires, like around here, the wires are a certain thickness of metal. But why? What's going on here? There's a certain resistance built into the wires, just a property of physics. So electrons are trying to move through the wire, and they encounter a certain amount of resistance. But if there's enough push, enough voltage, enough current, it moves through the wire, but the wire has to dissipate that resistance. It encounters resistance. So I'm going to bring this whole an analogy back to us. The flow is encountering a resistance, and it has to get dissipated. So it gets dissipated in wires as heat. The reason why I have a circuit breaker is the circuit breaker is designed to trip before too much heat builds up in the wire, because otherwise the wire becomes the circuit breaker in the form of setting your walls on fire. So there's a balance there when that occurs. Now it turns out that if you took the same wire, so these wires, and they're built into the earth, they're designed to handle what's called 20 amps, which is a certain amount of flow. Just think of the river, a certain amount of water moving through per second that goes through in that wire. If I was able to take the wire and cool it down to what's called 3 degrees above absolute zero. The Kelvin scale is minus 273 degrees centigrade below zero. If you go 3 degrees above that, you can cool a wire down to that point. All the resistance goes away. The same wire that was limited to 20 amps can now run thousands of amps through it. Jonathan called it. It's called a superconductor. Now, how does that map back to us? All the resistance that we're holding in our system, that we've been taught to hold, that like Ram Dass says, we enter into this conspiracy that says, I'll believe you are who you think you are if you believe I am who I think I am. And then that when we come together and we're in solidarity about that, and that includes maintaining the legitimacy of the denial mechanisms. It's one hell of a conspiracy. And that maintains the defense mechanism. That maintains the avoid feeling at all cost thing. So the resistance that produces shows up in our nervous system, and it limits how much life force can come through. It's right, it's like stepping on a hose to some degree. But your cells need the life force in order to maintain and be alive. And here's the important word. Vibrant is one word. Vital is the one. That's the real one I'm looking for. Vitality is what? It's the flow of life through the cells. So, what I've discovered along the way of my own journey, bringing all this electronic stuff back to us, is when we allow ourselves to to feelings to come and to be with them and to be in presence, that process is the process of eliminating the resistance or reducing the resistance from our system. It's not that resistance is an issue. It's that we carry way too much of it to try to protect ourselves. But who's the we who's trying to protect us? Ego. Thank you. It's the ego, which is the part that believes that we can die. Now, we can't. I know we're going into some philosophical places here, but what we think we are can die. What we actually are cannot. And so we enter into that conspiracy, which also says, I'm Eric. I've got this body. This is what I am. Listen to the linguistics, right? People talk about it all the time. I'm hungry. I only have 4 weeks to live. You know, listen to the linguistics. It's a mistaken identity. The ego says it's not safe to feel. If I think I'm the ego, then I'm saying it's not safe to feel. I'm now absorbing that belief system from the ego. The paradox is, by accepting that, because it's afraid, it's causing its own demise. It's causing its own suffering. It's causing its own dis-ease. So the process of awakening is starting to differentiate ourselves from that mistaken identity. An important part of that is allowing the feelings that want to come to just start to come, because that starts to break down the defense mechanism, right? Fear is an interesting mechanism. I discovered that fear itself is afraid. And so what it does to protect itself is it creates a layer around the thing that's actually afraid of. And that secondary layer says, be afraid to look this way. And right there, that's the crux of, that's the genesis of all the distractions we feel like we need to have. Because, I can't look that way. And of course, most of this is unconscious unless you start to bring it out into conscious awareness. But once you do, and the ego says, don't look this way, and you go, oh yeah? Let's look at this. Well, what's going on in that instant is you're in presence. Now, fear has another name, darkness. What is it that keeps it in the dark? The thing that thing that we're afraid to look at. What's the thing that keeps it in the dark? Here's the funny punch. Ignorance? Ignorance is, ignorance plays into it, but the punchline of the joke is, it's us avoiding looking at the fear that creates its darkness. That's the punchline. What happens the moment you shine your conscious awareness into that thing that you call fear? Have you ever tried it? What happens when you look at it straight on?
It's not actually what you thought it was.
It's not what you thought it was. It's not even.
It's not as scary.
It's not as scary. And in fact, there's actually nothing there. There's a movie called, I don't know, I'm sure somebody here saw it, the Never Ending Story.
Of course.
Right? I love the thing about that. You know, the kid is running all over the place. And for those who don't know it, the kid's mother died. Grief is coming in to take over his entire inner world is color. He's happy, his mother's there, his family's there, his mother dies. And all of a sudden the grief in the form of black and white is just sucking the color out of his inner world, and he's having to go into this space and encounter all sorts of thought systems and projections of his own. And there's this really nasty looking wolf, bloodthirsty, it's just dripping, and he's coming after him all sorts of places in the movie, and he's running. And what happens when you run from the wolf? It gets stronger, you know. And at some point towards later in the movie, he's backed into a corner and he has to encounter the wolf, which is fear. And the second he turns around and does, it just collapses. That's it. That's it. So the thing that really helps to collapse it all is willingness. You don't have to know how to deal with it or even look at it. It's like I've been going like this my entire life. I don't even know how to turn my head to go there, but I'm willing to know. That's all it takes. Course in Miracles says all it takes is a little bit of willingness, and then the higher self steps in and moves you. And as you encounter these places in you, in us, that have been held in some form of resistance, it loosens up. And as it loosens up, it directly impacts the nervous system. And as it loosens up and the nervous system then heals from that, it gets stronger. And the nervous system is the part of our body that carries the electrical system. So when you're breathing and you're doing yogic breath practices, the pranayama, etc., what it does is it turns up the life force. Right? There's the mapping of the bodies. There's the first most subtle body is the bliss body, and then that is encased by the wisdom body, and that's encased by the mind emotional body. That's the one where this plane that we're living in is where this is the schoolhouse for us. Then that's encased in the pranic body, the life force breath body, and then we have the physical body. And the energy flows right through in that way. So when we do pranayama of some sort, any kind of a breathing practice, a conscious breathing practice, it turns up the life force. Now, however, there are some practices that if you do prematurely can kill you, because too much resistance in the nervous system from unresolved trauma and feelings like that, and you bring in a higher level of current, that can cause problems. It does happen for some people. They go do Kundalini practices before they're ready because the ego says, I want that. And they start to crank up the current. And sometimes it goes spontaneous and people get black eyes and all sorts of weird shit's going on in their body because there's too much life force coming in. So there's this natural process that protects us. I mean, a higher level process that says, you're not going to be able to handle all this amount of energy. So go do this other work instead first and clear it out. And that will guide you through that kind of thing. When I was in India in 1986, it was painful. That's all I gotta say. I came up against every bit of resistance, of fear around, and my defense mechanism that was there. But my ego was like, where's the power? I want the power, all this meditation for 5 hours a day or whatever we're doing. And I had a dream where I kind of am walking this way, and about 50 feet away, the guru's over there where I was living in the ashram. And I turn my head to her, and she turns her head to me, and our eyes connect. And I feel this current coming through into me, and I wake up, I go, whoa! I feel like if I allowed that in, it would destroy me. I said, I'm not ready yet. 45 years later of doing the work, I feel like my nervous system is now carrying the amount of energy that was representing at that point. But it doesn't feel like any big deal. But things happen. This goes for all of us. It's like, here's our buddy Ganesh. See Ganesh, and what's behind Ganesh's head is this round thing, right? And you see it over Jesus, see it over Mary, you see it over a lot of spiritual beings. What is that? It's basically the emanation of the pure light at an immense amount of energy. And that energy is electromagnetic in nature because it expresses through our nervous system. So it all lines up. Go to whatever level is your experience. Call it in. Say, okay, let's do the work. Help. Let it guide you. Let it do the work. It will clear you out. And the result is a natural strengthening of your nervous system, which is also affecting every cell in the body. Now, resistance is futile. Here's what I mean. We're being pulled by a homing beacon. Everybody's sitting in this satsang. There's no question about it. We're being pulled by a homing beacon to wake up, to go home in some big, profound way, which is actually here now. Basically, there's the phrase that says the guru takes you to enlightenment, kicking and screaming all the way. It's the kicking and screaming that's the resistance thing, right? We're going there no matter what. It's just a matter of how long do you want to dig your heels in. Which brings us to the question of surrendering to the process. Let me just do a little time check over here. Yeah. The resistance is really the resistance to allowing the will of the one to work through us. That's really what we're talking about. Course in Miracles had one of my favorite lines. It says, "Fear of the will of God is one of the strangest beliefs the human mind has ever made." Fear of the will of God is one of the strangest beliefs the human mind has made. I sat with that idea for like 35 years to unwind my fear of the will of God. Why does that even exist? I mean, how many people get a kick out of, like, Christian fundamentalists? I'm a God-fearing person. Jesus. Jesus. Where does that come from? What does that mean? I will smite thee. What's going on here? I believe I've come to the conclusion that humans have God and their parents emotionally confused. Because when we're an infant, who's God? What is God? What's the only and ultimate authority figure in one's life? The parents. How many had parents who were enlightened? Raise your hand. Oh,
In a lot of ways.
yeah.
Well, my father liked LSD when we discovered it. So, and he was born in 1927, way out of his generation.
Cool.
Yeah, he loved it.
Way cool. Nevertheless, all our parents carried a certain element of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And they were our authority figures. So we internalize that. To the degree that we have not fully differentiated from our parents is to the degree that we still carry a fear of the will of God. I mean, even as late as in the last couple of years, there's a part of me, I could feel it back here. If I fully let my guard down, this is what it's saying, right? If I fully let the guard down, let the defenses down, let the resistance go, if I fully let that go, then something bad's going to happen. I'm still working on that one. As if by me clinging to these things that I'm clinging to, I am somehow safer and protecting myself. Do you see the insanity of this?
Is that from you going to church? Do you think?
I never
The
went to
religion?
church. I never went to church. I went to Hebrew school against my will.
See, my dad also didn't allow me to go to church. Against the will.
Yeah, Hebrew school by any other name is still Hebrew school.
What's your bar mitzvah?
The bar mitzvah was actually pretty high. I was pretty high. Those Jews, they picked the time when you sound the worst in your life to have to stand up in front of the entire congregation and sing. Your voice is cracking. That's called humility or humiliation, depending on how bad it is. So it's hanging around inside ourselves, these resistances. The resistance says, as long as I have some level of control, I'm safe. Nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing. Okay. Have you experienced some level of, like over the years of doing your inner work, some level of surrender to the greater whole? What have you noticed as you've stepped into that place in you more?
Space.
Space. Yeah.
Freedom.
Freedom.
Life is
Yeah.
easier.
Life is easier. Yeah.
Peace.
Peace. Yeah.
Creative problem solving.
Creative problem solving.
There's a flow.
Good. Flow.
Yeah.
Right. Flow. Things just unfold in the best possible way, full of wonderful surprises. What are we still holding on to the rest of that stuff for? We've already proven that it's safe to let go. So there's a certain amount of this that under our own volition we're able to do, and we have. It's what got us to the place we're at right now. But you can't go the full distance on your own, because the you that you think you are and the you that you would engage in to do the rest of the work is the one that's creating the problem in the first place. So where Einstein said you can't solve the problem at the level that the problem was created at, what that means is you have to go to a higher order of intelligence, a higher order of power, literally a higher order of power. So that's the next level of surrender. It's like, take it, manage my energy field, bring whatever needs to bring, whatever I need to experience, bring it on. There's a bit of fear in there, but I've already lived enough with this to know that this is the best thing for me to be able to say. What I'm essentially doing is saying, take this process called Eric and manage it. Because we live in a hyper-individualistic society. That's another big source of suffering. Because hyper-individual means separate from others, separate from the whole. Don't tell me I can't make my own decisions. How's that been working out for you? Knock yourself out. Now we're hovering into this whole space of free will. You see, you can't pull on one thread without pulling on all of them eventually. Thy will be done. What does that say? What does it say to you when you say it? What comes up?
For me, it's like whatever happens is what's God's will is, but through God's grace, it's how I can respond or react or, do nothing kind of thing.
So you're comfortable inviting that in?
Yeah, God's will, not mine. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I don't always do it, but I would like to do it more.
That's what I was going to go to next.
Right.
What is it that doesn't always do it? What is it? You may not answer it right now, but this is an important question. When resistance is up, what is it in here? And I won't even call it a me. What's going on in this field of patterning that's still clinging? Because that's it, right? Buddha said, source of all suffering is the clinging of mind. So there is still this, and it's at the mind level where the clinging occurs. What's going on here?
It's a form of the devil, that thing that even the pain is familiar. And that familiarity is some odd sense of safety.
Because it's predictable?
Mm-hmm. Predictable.
And that's what the ego thrives on, predictability for its sense of safety.
Familiar.
Okay.
Familiar.
Familiar. Right. That's good. Okay.
Not unknown. Not the darkness of fear that is scary.
So you've equated unknown with darkness. Is that
No.
an you just said it in the same sentence.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm questioning it. Is that an absolute tightly coupled pair? No. And the reason why I'm calling that out is in order to be in flow, like to be in just complete abandon, and Jesus said you want to be basically happy and joyful, etc., you have to be a child again. So there's a level of abandonment. A child that is completely free to play without any concern is a child that feels completely safe and protected by its parent. And we lose that somewhere along the way. And so the process is to come back to it, but not from the pre-egoic level. It's the post-egoic level. And this is where we're hovering, you know. Abandonment is to say, abandoning concerns, abandoning the fears, abandoning the resistances, allowing the flow of the divine to live through this vehicle and express however it wants to. You know, somebody once came to me, a client, and said, I'm afraid that my purpose is going to entail me doing things I really hate doing. I said, okay, we have a few conversations to have here. Each of us are gifted with incredible, I don't even know, I don't want to use the word talent. What is it? Incredible. We're just gifted with incredible gifts. And it's the most natural way for us to be. And when we allow ourselves to be that, everything comes. And so, you know, after doing 40-something years of working through trauma and therapy and becoming a therapist and doing medicine work and living in India and all this stuff, and I finally landed what it felt like really home in myself. I was like the most at ease and the most playful and joyful ever. And it's like, oh, the conclusion of all those years was, I just have to be me. It couldn't be simpler. But now look at all the reasons why we can't be us. I'm afraid I'm going to be criticized if I'm me. I'm afraid of this. I'm going to run out of money. We're already designed to be alive in joy. And if we're not, it's because of the resistances and the defensiveness and all that stuff that we work through. We're here to work through. It's our most natural state. It's our most effortless state. So practically speaking, without being fixated on it, I invite you, as you're just walking around your life, be in awareness, notice the forms of resistance that show up for you. With no fear. It's like, oh, there you are. Come on in. Oh, there's that one. Oh, I didn't think that was resistance. Look at that. Right? Because it's an inner process. Just invite it. I want to see. I'm ready. I'm ready.
When you say resistance, you mean something that's you want to be other than it is.
Say it again.
When you say the word resistance, to see what we're resisting, anything that we want to be other than it is.
What I'm suggesting is ask to see the way resistance operates in you. So let's look at two levels. We call it the story level and the meta story, or the higher level. Most humans are deeply entrenched in the story level, right? Just listen to everybody's As the World Turns chapter of the day. That happens to be a very effective ploy of the ego to keep you from seeing the patterns. If you're in the story, you can't see the structure of the story. Because the story is just the way resistance operates, the structure of the story, the need for that story You're going out to these other levels, right? Don't look at the defense. Look at the need for the defense. Keep going up. So now you pull out of the story. Once you see the pattern, and you see it with the light of your own presence in present time in awareness, this is where you see it from. This is where you see everything from. This is, if you're caught in the story, you're only seeing through these eyes. When you go out of the story, you're seeing through the third eye. You're perceiving. You can see other levels, other layers. Once you see the pattern, that's the end of the power of the pattern. So you see a way a particular resistance shows up, either in relationship or in job, or it doesn't matter what the form of it is. And you get all caught up in the, oh, woe is me, how am I going to do this? And the anxiousness around it. And it's like it layers, it layers, it layers. It's a house of mirrors built inside a house of mirrors. But once you pop out of it and you realize, wait a second, this is not where the action is. This is not where the answer is. This is not where the solution is. Then you start to perceive from this other level. And you notice all of a sudden now it's like, okay, there's the story. I see I was there. Go out. What's the pattern? As soon as you see it, you pulled the plug on it. And then you may go back in again, but you come back out again. 2 or 3 times of that, you're spending more time seeing the pattern than being caught in the pattern. Very, very practical. Thoughts, ideas, examples, questions on how to apply this?
A lot of this just comes down to awareness, awareness, awareness.
Correct. That's what it always comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, you
so,
can't change anything until you're there.
Well, and you notice one good form of resistance is checking out. I checked out of school all the time when I was a kid because I just couldn't be present. It was too painful. We still do that as adults. So notice that, right? When you check out, you left awareness. So that's really important. By the grace of God, Guru, Self, something keeps bringing us back to awareness. Think about it when it started showing up in your life. Did you do something to make that happen? No. You did everything you could to keep it from happening, if anything. It's the grace of the evolutionary process. We just happened to be ready. Then the light switch turned on. So it's operating here. It will always, that is the channel, that is the source in us of the homing beacon. It's always emanating. And so the resistance is what's left in us to simply staying here. Because here, which is an inside thing, is completely still. You called it out earlier, inner peace. It's completely still. And it's entirely possible to navigate in the world, so there's action through the body in the world, but inside, you're completely still. I noticed that as certain old traumas and wounds resolved and let go, the mind is much quieter. Much quieter. Because the mind is part of the defense resistance mechanism. These feelings are constantly, the old feelings like this hurts, this hurts, this hurts. The mind goes, get away, get away, get away. And it keeps constructing things to keep you from feeling this. Once this is now brought to conscious awareness and released, resolved, integrated back into the self, that's the probably the most powerful. It's not, healing's not even a great word anymore, I'm coming to realize. It's integration. that fragment that I cast out unconsciously as a kid out of fear of pain, I let it back into conscious presence of awareness. It integrates back into the self. That immediately turns up your power, right? Because the energy field is now more unified. Coherent waves of a unified type is an amplification of energy. That distraction, the defragmentation of the mind, throwing this part this way and this part this way and this part this way, is breaking up the coherency in an effort to try to stop yourself from feeling. So the need to stop the feeling fragments the mind, fragments us. We feel that breaks up that sense of wholeness, and there's the suffering. So as we let go of the resistance, as the willingness to simply be what I am, which is whole, it moves all the fragments closer into present awareness. Simultaneously strengthening you, as you go through and bring these fragments in, it strengthens your nervous system, which does what? Allows you to bring more back in. And now you get into a virtuous cycle, right? These fragments came home, your nervous system is stronger, which can allow you to go deeper and bring more back in. At some point, there's no boundary anymore of personal. It's all ancestral, it's all transpersonal. I don't even know where any of these energies come from when they're going through them, but all I know is there's nothing to be afraid of. If it's coming through, it's because Source knows this circuitry is capable of transmuting this that's coming through. And now I'm in a permanent state of service. And that's a big booster. It's an immense booster. That being of service is not about what you do. It's what you are. And then it doesn't matter if you're writing a letter to somebody, if you're writing a book, if you're saying hello to somebody in Trader Joe's, you are emanating this radiance through your psyche, through your soul, through the psyche, through the nervous system. And we're walking around literally as sources of light in this world that is freaking everybody the fuck out.
He himself said, the greatest gift you can bring to the world is your own self.
The greatest gift you could bring to the world is your being, capital B. Because your being and my being and our being, there's only one. And so now feel this connection. This is the source of our safety. Because you're not walking around as an isolated entity in this big bad world of random things that can happen to you. That's an illusion. That's complete fiction. What it is I am a vehicle of expression of the infinite. And whatever needs to come through in this instant comes through. A few weeks ago, I went into my sauna. I let it crank up. It was 95 degrees outside, so I let it get, it's an infrared sauna. I let it get up to about 130 or so, which is what an infrared needs to be. I'm in it for like a half hour. I come out, take a shower. It's cooling down. I'm sitting on the couch, and I hear, I go, what the fuck was that? And I go outside. It's glass. It's made of glass and wood. The entire top glass, which was safety glass, like your windshield, shattered into thousands of pieces. I was not sitting in there at that moment. That would have been bad. First thing I noticed, thank you, I'm protected. What is it that does the protection? The harmonic field that's radiating through us. And the more we give up on the resistance stuff, the more this just naturally radiates through us. And you could walk through a mine field, if that's what you're called for whatever reason, and be okay. Don't try this at home, kids. And then I know half the minds in the room, well, what if it goes wrong? Well, you're not the body anyway. I mean, yes, I like this incarnation. I'm having fun here. I want to stay in this thing as long as it, Source wants me to stay here and be in this. So let's go back down to less dramatic example. It's pretty crazy out there. People are afraid of all sorts of bad things happening. As long as you're tuned and aligned to that which you naturally are, which is an expression and an extension and a vehicle of source energy expressing through you into this plane, you're safe. I know this right to the center of my core.
A couple things coming up for me.
Go ahead.
I've had a couple moments, 2 moments are coming to mind of being in total bliss and safety and environments in which that wouldn't typically happen. One was being in a hospital and just being like totally alive and present. And another was being at Costco, which is so stimulating.
Wow.
Advertisements,
Really?
and bright fluorescent lights, and I was just like,
No way.
total bliss.
Wow.
Satchitananda completely. So I feel a lived experience of what you're describing, though infrequent. I feel like this is a big piece of it. Waking up, the process of going to sleep and then waking back up, and that seems to be one of the I guess, how do you in your own life connect to this practice of letting go of resistance? I feel like the start of the day is an important piece of that.
The start of the day is really important. When I'm cognizant enough, the first thought that I bring through myself in the morning is, how can I serve today? And then I pull a particular prayer from Course in Miracles. Where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say, and to whom?
And please make it really clear.
And then, yes, and the one that I actually add on when I have a particular prayer, knowing what I can construct and concoct in my mind, is like, make it so obvious that even I can see it, please. And so that's how I started off. I basically am handing the day off. And that's it. Everything goes. It's on autopilot, but very intelligent autopilot, not like my car.
And then you go with the flow.
And then you go with the flow. And then you go with the flow. And things can unfold inside yourself. Once you hand your life over to Source, your growth process accelerates, and it is no longer under your control. It never was. The only difference is you finally admit it. And you're brought through the experiences necessary to clear it out. Immense resistance shows up as cancers and, all sorts of nasty stuff. There are people who get cancers and it has a major awakening effect on them, and they get whatever it is that's behind it, and they work through that stuff, and the cancer goes away. We have a good friend who's just experienced that. This stuff is all connected. I've got a meditation I want to run tonight. I might run us a little bit over, but it's a good one. All right. You guys on Zoom, you should be able to hear this. Let me know if you can't, otherwise you could mute yourselves. All right, here we go. This is called the still point.
So now I invite you all to settle into physical stillness.
Hang on. I'm going to change the audio out of that and over to my computer, which is way better. Okay, here we go.
Becoming sensitive to your own breathing as you inhale and exhale. Just like a gentle wave as it rises and falls in this vast ocean of stillness. As you settle and stop, you might become aware of things still moving internally and externally. Allowing whatever comes to come and whatever goes to go. We don't have any contention, any resistance to anything. What does that feel like? Not to resist anything, to demand anything, to want anything. Such that we're like a big open field. Anything can come. And it's in its nature that it naturally dissolves into this wide open field. So you're sitting here. You can call it practicing meditation. Really, you're just sitting here with absolutely no agenda, no trying, not expecting to get anything. Just noticing, simply witnessing whatever comes, whatever goes. Can you sense the still point in all of these movements? Whether internal or external, so-called. You might have a perception of it as being like the center or the still point in the eye of a hurricane, the eye of the storm. Can you sense that? Even though in essence it's not locatable, we can intuit it. In some traditions they refer to it as the heart. Can you rest into your own heart? That still point. That still point doesn't really have anything to say. But this silence is really the most authentic language. And you have to know it for yourself. That still point doesn't have any views or opinions, likes or dislikes. No desires. Because resting within it brings complete relief. It quenches all desires. when we rest back into this, if a certain desire does pop up in the mind, it has no inclination to run after them, as it's completely satiated. Content just to rest here. Nothing worth thinking about, nothing to do, nowhere to go, and no one to be. Things still come and go, but they don't sway you. Just like that eye of the hurricane. Everything's swirling around, and yet there's something deep within the center that remains untouched. So this is all our practice is intended to do. Just to help us come back to this. To learn to recognize the still point. And that's a little easier to do when we sit in stillness and stop the movement. But the more we practice, we can recognize the still point, even in the midst of movement. It's just changing perceptions. And even if you have the highest peak experience of bliss or love or ecstasy, or the deepest hell of pain or fear, terror or grief, guess what? That still point doesn't move. The highs come and go. The lows come and go. None of these ecstatic experiences are permanent. None of the visits to hell are permanent. The still point is the only constant that you know or recognize in all of those experiences. So it's the only thing you can rely upon. And this is why the Buddha said to make this Dharma, this truth, your refuge or your island in the midst of the tumultuous sea of samsara. No teacher, no guru, no drug, no peak experience can either give you this or guarantee that it will be yours for good. So we stop looking outside or relying on external things to reveal reality. And we simply just come home to what is so natural, so obvious. And what might appear nothing special starts to reveal itself more and more as we keep shedding all the layers of confusion, attachment, identification, delusion. All the running, and just stop. And when we really stop, completely stop, then we drop deeper and deeper down, deep into the stillness. And it all just happens. As Ramana Maharshi says, we're pulled deep into the current where we actually have no control. We've let go of the controller. Recognizing that there's no one making it happen other than the power of wisdom and love itself. So when you feel ready, you can just slowly come out of the meditation. But recognizing that even though the perceptions are changing, that we're taking in more visuals or sounds or moving the body, nothing really changes at the deepest level. That still point is always there.